Hello everybody, thank you for joining me. We're going to take a look at the Montessori early language approach and look at it from a neurodevelopmental perspective. So first, who am I? I'm a teaching assistant at Harvard. I've been helping to teach the Neuroscience of Learning course for just about 10 years. And I'm also the founder and president of Maitri Learning. On our website, you'll see a lot of free resources and free downloads for you in the Learning Center. Also on our YouTube channel, there are many videos, and those are all designed to help you in the work that you're doing with the young child. Okay, I'm also a wife and a mom, and we have a puppy who's very cute, and I like to kayak. Okay, so first, before we start, it can really help your learning if you take 1 minute to make the following short lists. First, what do I know about Montessori education? On the other side of the same page, you can write, what do you know about literacy education? Okay, pause the video for 1 minute, write these things down, and then resume. Let's start with the evolution of language and neurodevelopment. So first, there's a great quote from Maria Montessori to get us started. In the beginning, when humans first came on the earth, they had no language. Language had to be created by humanity through a long period of civilization. And if you're interested in this, the evolution of language for humans, then please look at this research study referenced on the page. It has this great graphic and lots of other information, so you can go deep in that topic if you're interested. All the references for this talk are listed at the end of the slides. I'll show you when we get there. So language evolved as we did, right? When we were first speaking, language served to unite our communities, right? We first spoke with gestures and with simple spoken words. That's how it all began. This helped us meet our essential needs. And at first we used mostly nouns, verbs, and a few adjectives. As our culture grew, language became complex and words took on new functions. So you see this going from the simple to the more complex, right? Isolated to more complex. And later we began to write in pictures. So this is the first foundations of writing. It started with pictures, and we have cave paintings going back for a very long time. And then we have pictogram alphabet that we first see around 3500 BCE. We also started to get more sophisticated with our use of pictures. And you can see that with the cuneiform script and also Egyptian hieroglyphics, okay? So we're starting to advance our capacity for writing. And then we attached symbols with sounds. We created a phonetic code. And this happened across languages, even in languages that are now primarily logographic, like Chinese. This process took about 8,000 years, right? 8,000 years, okay. Today, the young child builds the primary neural networks for spoken language in about 3 years. That's right, just 3. 8,000 to 3. Okay, they're doing a lot. All right. And here's a great quote from Patricia Kuhl, who's a fantastic researcher in the field of literacy in early childhood. By the age of 3, all typically developing children show the ability to carry out a sophisticated conversation. Wow. By 3. And we've seen this, right? Dr. Montessori also knew this innately, even though she didn't have advanced imaging equipment, no fMRIs, no diffusion tensors, sensing imaging, nothing. She had her eyes. And that's what we all have. We can't forget the value of our own observations in discovering what is happening with the children who we are with and with the other humans of all stages that we are with. This lovely chart from the Absorbent Mind looks specifically at some more predictable developmental aspects of a typically developing child from birth to age 2.5. So just pause for a minute and think to yourself, what kind of language experiences would a child who might grow up to be Shakespeare or Maya Angelou or whoever your favorite author is, what kind of language experiences might they have that would enable them to have this kind of exquisite mastery of words and syntax and form of words? If you're alone, pause the video for a minute, think about that. If you're with someone else, take a minute to talk about it and then start again. And one thing I'll say is that as we get through this, you'll see that Dr. Montessori just knew. She just knew, and it's built into the Montessori program. Let's start first with some neurobiology. So we learn language via social relationships, okay? And another great quote from Patricia Kuhl, social interaction acts as a gate for infants' initial language learning. It's a gate. This is, right, the gatekeeper. We're always hearing about that. You got to get past the gatekeeper. We need social interaction to first spark the child's capacity for language, okay? And then it's this growth in conversational turns that predicts growth in vocabulary and vice versa. So what do I mean by conversational turns? You don't think about having a conversation with an infant, right? But we are. When they look at us and they go, ba, 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 and we instinctively go, ba, 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 right back at them, that's a conversational turn. And we do that with infants, and we do it more sophisticated ways as the child grows. We take turns with the conversation. They serve, we return. They serve, we return. We serve, we hope that they return. It's this opportunity for children to speak that really develops their spoken language capacity. So here's some brain pictures. They always say you should show pictures of the brain and people will think you're smarter. So, okay, here it is. Think I'm smart, right? Okay, here's some data that's showing you that those neural networks become stronger depending on how many conversational turns you have. The more you have, the stronger your neural networks for language. And here's some classic research from Hart and Risley back in the 90s. They looked at families to see how much vocabulary children were being exposed to, and did that have a long-term impact on their development. They found something really shocking, and which is really at the core of equity. And for all of us who are interested in social justice and working towards that in our teaching and parenting practices, we really need to know that vocabulary develops based on exposure. And this study found that in professional families, there was just tremendous amounts more of vocabulary exposure. Middle class families, there was less. Working class, there was less. And welfare families, there was dramatically less. So this is a poverty issue. This is an equity issue. Okay, so our role in working with children is to give them this gorgeous, rich language environment. Expose them to the best words. You don't have to use small words. Okay, you could speak in wonderful language, even from very young ages. Working memory is another key aspect of vocabulary development, and working memory is a foundational aspect of executive functions you may have heard of. It's when you can keep track of something to use a little bit later on. You keep track of it in your working memory, like you're working with it. And in language and conversation, you can think of it this way. Someone's talking and you notice something they say and you're like, oh, I want to get back to that. I want to talk a little bit more about that. And so you keep track of it in your working memory. We don't always interrupt and blurt, sometimes we do, but really we try to use our working memory to keep track of it so that when they pause, we can step in and take our intelligent turn, picking up on the threads that they laid out for us, right? That's working memory. There are many things we do in the Montessori classroom that support working memory. Bring me games is one that really comes to mind at first. And we'll talk more about that, but you probably know about that. It's when you're doing little vocabulary work and you say, bring me, bring me. Okay, they have to keep track of it. Go get it and bring it back. So here's your first quiz. Let's see how you're doing, okay? First, social interactions and relationships are less important than academics and education. True or false? Social interactions and relationships, less important than academics and education. What do you think? What do you think? True or false? False! Human relationships dramatically influence the developing brain's physical structure. See that tiny brain on the left? That's the baby brain, and it's growing. It's physically getting bigger. Neural networks being laid down. Okay, lots of cortical density, gray matter density, white matter being laid down. Okay, that's from growth. A lot of that is experience dependent. That's why the opportunities for the children to speak, the exposure to a rich language environment are critical during the early years, especially. Okay, you ready? Okay, so here's the Montessori language path. We're starting with spoken language, and that's what I'm going to focus on now. Of course, there's other steps. We'll get there. And this includes things like natural conversations, which we've talked about. Also, though, music, songs, poetry, rhymes, tongue twisters, those are all really key, really key. True stories, storytelling, sharing positive events in your life, encouraging, inspiring events in your life with the children in short little stories that they can hang on to. They remember their working memory capacity is just developing. So if we give them these long lecture stories, when I was a kid, it's going to be hard for them to keep track of that so that they can step in when you're done with your story. So short little true stories like about your dog, getting into the trash or something like that. Those are great stories. Reading and exploring books and explicit 3-period lessons. We're going to give an example of that in a minute. First, I want to ground you in Montessori's view of education and the importance of observation. Here's a great quote from her. We must proceed not on the basis of our own ideas or on our own prejudices, not on preconceived methods, but by observing the child. When I say that we must take the child as our teacher, you will probably object, saying we must educate the child and give him all sorts of information, that he must learn the subjects that we think are important. Do not have these prejudices. When the child's energies are freed, the child will better be able to learn than before. Therefore, I would call this the child's method and not the Montessori method. Okay, so right there, we see that this is not meant to be a guru method. We have created Montessori as a guru. This is an error. Montessori is a scientific pedagogy. We should not worship her as a guru. She was an intelligent, brilliant woman who laid us on the course towards scientific learning, the learning sciences, okay? The child's method, all from observation. Keep that in mind. So I want to take a second to introduce you to Ms Dwyer, who advanced the Montessori method for English from Dr. Montessori's roots in Italian, which is, of course, a completely phonetic language, to English, which is a partially phonetic language. Ms. Dwyer taught both in London and in Africa in the Swahili language. Swahili and English are both partially phonetic languages. So she evolved the method so that it works beautifully for partially phonetic languages like English. And her focus really is on exploration. That's that early part of the program we've been talking about. We want to encourage children and inspire them to see the beauty of language. And things like music, songs, poetry, tongue twisters, those really do it for the young child. So I just want to give you an example of how you might use a tongue twister. You know, you're lined up, and you're in a classroom and you're waiting, you're at the grocery store, you're in a line, you have time. And what usually happens when the kids are just waiting and doing nothing and they have no intelligent purpose to direct their attention to, direct their activity towards? Mischief, right? Mischief happens. So what can we do to help support the child, keep them out of mischief, and make life fun, enjoyable? Tongue twisters are a great thing to do. Something simple. You're just like, I'm thinking of a tongue twister. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, leather, yellow leather, red leather. And you try to say it fast. They say, you try to say it faster. Just have a little fun. Drop these out whenever you have that waiting time that tends to end up in some tricky behaviors, okay? Tongue twisters are great for that. Poems are also great for that. If you can memorize them, sometimes you can have a poem a week. You put the poem on a little easel stand so the children in your room who are reading can read it, and it will be a reminder to you to do that poem with the children regularly, during the week. So that's a new one every week, and you can memorize it, and they can memorize it. They love it. It shows them the cadence, the meter, the temper of our language. Very useful for the developing brain and very useful for helping them understand the complex and rich nature. It's like a mosaic of language, right? Songs are similar for the same reason. Meter, rhythm, all of that come out with poetry and songs. True stories, I just mentioned, but do tell your true stories. Keep them short and sweet. Books, reading aloud. Wordless books are great for the child who wants to start reading but can't yet. They won't be intimidated or discouraged by the presence of the written word. Sometimes that makes the child feel like, I'm not going to touch that because I'm not going to succeed. So they won't look at it. Wordless books are a great support in that situation. And then you can progress through all the different kinds of books that you may have in your environment. The question game where you ask them, I remember yesterday we went on a nature walk. Do you remember what tree we saw, the first kind of tree we saw? Try to encourage them to have that memory from a day later, right? And who was leading? Did we see that special bird? Remember that bird we saw singing? Okay, those types of things. That's a question game. Asking questions about an activity you did together, right? To remind them, recalling, building up their long-term memory. And then you have enrichment of vocabulary. And this is really where the 3-period lesson comes into play. 3-period lesson is critical. You'll find it throughout all ages and stages of development. It is useful. And it works in a very elegant and simple way to teach vocabulary. And we start always with the child, right? Child focus. So we're starting with the parts of their body. We move out to the objects and furnishings in the environment, right? And then we move into vocabulary cards to help them name things that aren't immediately in the environment. But always start with the physical when that's available. Vocabulary cards are a next step because they're more abstract, right? 2-dimensional picture versus a 3-dimensional object, okay? Okay, so let me tell you a little bit more about the 3-period lesson. I have a little video, and it's going to show you that really it's a playful game, and most of the learning happens in period 2. Okay, so watch this. This is a die. Say die. This is pie. Oh, I like cherry pie. Pie. These are pliers. Pliers. Say pliers, pie, die. Show me the pliers. Show me the die. Show me the pie. Show me the pliers. Where are the pliers? That's right. Where's the die? Where's the pie? Pick up the pliers. Put them over here. Pick up the die. Put it right here. Pick up the pie. Put it right here. Pick up the pliers. Put them down here. Pick up the die. Put it over here. Pick up the pie. Put it here. Show me the pie. Show me the die. Show me the pliers. Close your eyes. I'm going to make it tricky for you. Open your eyes. Show me the die. Show me the pliers. Show me the pie. Close your eyes. I'm going to mix this up. This is too easy for you. Open your eyes. Show me the pie. Show me the die. Show me the pliers. That's right. What's this? Pliers. What's this? Die. What's this? Pie. You know these words. Next time, we'll do the rest. I think you saw that most of the activity happened in the second period, and it's in that second period where we can add in the bring me component to really work with their working memory. So you might go to the other side of the room and say, bring me the pliers, bring me the pie, bring me the die, right? The child has to walk all the way across and bring you back. Oh, you brought me the pliers. That's just what I wanted. Thank you. Put it away so carefully and come back and see me. And then you repeat this bring me aspect of the game, okay? A lot of fun, really challenges their working memory, helps them develop it. It's great exercise for working memory. So back to the big picture of spoken language, there are also many games we do with listen and do and spoken classifications, okay? There's more detail on this in another video that I made on our YouTube channel. It's a spoken language workshop video that you can really get into depth for how to give each of those spoken language lessons, okay? I hope you'll find time to use it. It's the core for everything. I think that's been clear. So here's the quiz, your next quiz. Spoken language activities are the foundation for all language work. True or false? And the answer is true. That's right. It's the core for everything. Don't skip it no matter what age you get a child, no matter what age you start with them. Start with spoken language. That's essential. And have fun with it. So back to the big picture of the language path. After spoken language, we're going to get into hearing the sounds of language, okay? That's everything we do in step 1, especially like tongue twisters, songs, poetry, but also the sound game. Now, before we talk about the sound game, we want to talk about the neurodevelopmental side of it. So our ear for sound is actually developing in infancy. We're not born with a fully mature auditory cortex and connection between our, ears here and the brain in there. It's not fully formed. That is actually created, those neural networks are created based on experience. That's why the child needs a rich environment, because they base their development, their physical development. Dr. Montessori called these the engrams that create the networks, nodes, and hubs in our brain. They result from experience, right? So they have to have a rich environment and the opportunity to interact with that environment to get optimal development. And that rich language environment needs to be from humans, not from screens. And this research speaks to that. So they took graduate students who were fluent Chinese speakers or fluent English speakers, and they had them either spend an hour each week live with a child from the opposite language. So if the graduate student was a native Chinese speaker, she was reading a book, Chinese book, to the child, speaking only in Chinese to these English-speaking children. Or if the graduate student was a native English-speaking student, she was or he were reading a book only in English, even though the children they worked with were native Chinese speakers. Their home was Chinese, was the language that was spoken. They followed these children, and after a few months, they saw that the children who had been with the graduate student live could hear all the sounds in the language, but the children who had watched the graduate student read the book, right, on the video, they couldn't hear those sounds in language. It was the human interaction that made all the difference. We cannot teach them just from screens. It has to be humans socially connecting with and emotionally connecting with the children, okay? Screens are helpful when you're older, not when you're younger. Save them for elementary. Now, in Montessori, there's many activities that we do to help develop this auditory cortex, these networks, right? And a lot of them we've reviewed. And the key one among these that we haven't really talked about yet is the sound game, which is also called I Spy. I Spy begins with beginning sounds. So we always want to start with something that's on the child's body, right? Or something so obvious they can't fail. You'll say, I'm thinking of something on your foot that starts with the sound sh, right? Shoe. Okay, they can't fail. Or something so obvious. I'm thinking of something in my hand that starts with the sound p. Because you want them to have total chance for success, no opportunity for failure. You want them to understand the rules, the mechanics of the game. So we're not trying to trip them up or make it tricky. We're just trying to show them how does the game work. Okay, we think of something, we think of its sounds, and then we say the sound. Okay, so that's beginning sounds. After you do that first lesson where it's obvious what you're going for, then you can have a selection of objects before you that the child can gather from the class. Okay, and you can say, I'm thinking of something on the rug that starts with the sound b. Maybe have a little basket, right? Or a little mug. Okay? And that's how you do beginning sounds. Now you do that for a couple weeks, maybe, until the child really understands how the game works. And then you add in complexity, okay? Adding in a little more challenge. So instead of just saying the first sound, you say the first sound and the ending sound. I'm thinking of a word that starts with b and ends with t. Starts with b, ends with t, okay? And then basket, okay? That's how they know it. You do that for all of the objects. Again, that little bit of complexity, ending and beginning and ending sounds. Do that for a few weeks once the children are skilled at it, however long it takes. Then you add in the middle sound. And we do it in this out of order, okay? Where we're going to do beginning sound, ending sound, and then middle sound, right? So for basket, you could choose any middle sound. And you could say, I'm thinking of something on the rug that starts with the sound b, ends with the sound t, and has the middle sound ah. Starts with b, ends with t, has the middle sound ah. When they find it, basket. Okay, that's right, you found it. Do that for all of the objects. And again, you're going to play this for a few weeks until they're really confident with it. Finally, the last step before you move on to the next key things is level 4. And this is where you do beginning, ending, middle, and any other sound. So we're segmenting. In literacy research, they call this segmenting. All right? So we're going to say, I'm thinking of a word that starts with b, ends with t, has the middle sound s. That's right, basket. Let's see if we can hear all of the sounds in that word. B, ask, et, b, ask, et. So there you are, right there, you're segmenting the sound for them. You're segmenting words. That's critical for them to be able to hear all the sounds in language. If you've ever seen children who are doing movable alphabet work and they're leaving out lots of sounds, step back to this part of the sound game because they may not have tuned in to the depth and complexity, the articulation of the word that they're thinking of and trying to write. Okay, all right, so that's sound games. Okay, so now we're up to writing. Finally, right, we're like, okay, that's where the language work begins. But of course, everything has been happening before this, and now we get to the tangible part that people actually think of as language lessons. Writing has many different aspects. Key among them are physiologic aspect, the ability to hold a pencil and write, but then there's the psychological aspect, right? How to think about words, how to connect in your mind, writing, written letters with sounds. And these are the key materials we use in a Montessori classroom to teach that are sandpaper letters, movable alphabet, metal insets, and the chalkboards. So neurodevelopmentally, we're just like other vertebrates. Our brains became specialized for hearing and speaking, and that's all the work we've done so far is taking advantage of that basic specialization that's in all vertebrates. But has evolution prepared our brains to read? You may not know this, but no, it has not prepared our brains to read. We have to do something really tricky to transform our brain called neuronal recycling to make it able to read. So some of our language they seem biologically programmed to develop. And this is showing you a picture of the arcuate fasciculus, this part of the brain, these connections that connect two key areas in the brain, Broca's and Wernicke's area. And that just naturally kind of develops, right? That's spoken language, listening to language, okay? That just naturally developed. But there's a part of our brain that we need to read called the visual word form area. And originally, that part of the brain is actually designed to see faces. It's not specialized to see letters at all, okay? And this is where it is. And you can see a big difference in this area in illiterate adults than from literate adults, all right? And so we need experience. We need to train the brain to teach it how to read letters. So we changed this area of the brain called the visual face form area into the visual word form area, okay? So we lose some of our ability. Right here you can see this is where it is, right? We have this big area to see faces because evolutionarily that was really important for us to be able to distinguish members of our group as apart from members of other groups, right? So when we learn to read, we actually give up some of that capacity so that we can be able to distinguish letters and associate sounds with letters. Isn't that wild? It's so cool. So the visual word form area has to be connected to the entire brain in order to read. So that's why we're not just focusing on just sit down and do your language work, letters, letters, letters. No, because we need everything in the brain to be developing in a rich way in order for us to really optimize our literacy potential, okay? Let me show you what I mean. First, we have to see something that's in the back of the brain, occipital lobe, right? Then we must recognize it. It has letter strings that have sounds, and that's up here in the temporal lobe, visual word form area. Then we have to find it in our lexicon, our memory of words, what words we know. That's executive frontal lobe. And then we have to respond either vocally or subvocally. That's like we'll hear our editor in our head even when we're not speaking, all right? That's up parietal lobe. Okay, so all of these areas are working together. It's like a reading committee, right? It's amazing anything ever gets done, right? Because committees, right? You've been in a committee, not so much with the getting things done. Okay, our brain's doing that all the time. So we need our entire brain to be able to read, which means we need our entire classroom to be able to read. Okay, don't just focus on one thing. If you want the child to develop well, we need practical life, we need sensorial, we need human interaction, social engagement, plus we need language and math and of course cultural, okay? All right, we need this repeated experience to wire distant brain areas into efficient connectivity networks, all right? That's what we're doing. We're taking, at first the child's using tons of real estate in the brain to read, but as they get more efficient, it gets smaller and smaller. They turn those crazy paths into strong superhighways, all right? Creating strong neural networks. So when we're back in the Montessori program, we're talking about this writing and we're training the brain to be able to see letters and associate them with sounds. The key way we do that is with the sandpaper letters, okay? And I have a short little video to show you how we use the sandpaper letters. Ah. 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 Apple. Africa. Cat. Ah. Okay, so it's a simple lesson. It's the 3-period lesson. We do the we do the d, we do the okay? And then we're going to just do the 3-period lesson with them. Show me the show me the d, trace the move the over here, move the d over here, trace the okay? Just like that, 3-period lesson to teach the sandpaper letters. And you'll notice that there is a phonogram right here, and you're thinking, why is she teaching a phonogram? This must be a later lesson. It's not a later lesson. You can do the phonograms right away. For the young child, it is absolutely the same. Whether they're doing 2 letters at a time, connected cursive is easier, or whether they're doing 1 letter at a time. Okay? Do not hold your phonograms back. And that is the key foundational aspect of the Montessori Dwyer approach. So if you want to learn more about this, you can go again to our pedagogy blog on our website, and there's that little video for you can watch as often as you like to, plus a little pedagogy blog that writes it up and explains what's going on. I also want to talk for a quick second about cursive. You can go and watch this video if you get a second, but basically Dr. Duhane, Stanislaus Dehaene, who is an incredible neuroscience researcher and who is also, his children are in Montessori school, he became a Montessori fan. He really is a fan of cursive. And let me just tell you from a literature research perspective, right now to date, we don't have slam dunk research that says cursive is definitely better than print. What we have is theoretical research, okay? And the theoretical research goes back to the evolutionary nature of language development. We started with gestures. Our hands are used to moving. There's a connection to different part of the brain that we're using when we're doing this kind of a smooth flowing movement than when we're doing the stick and ball of print, okay? So again, no research strongly says print is better or cursive is better, but theoretical research really strongly suggests that cursive is better. And the reasons are just what I talked about: natural flow to the letters, neurologically connected with gestures, clear delineation between words where sequencing is inherent because it's connected letters, fewer reversals. And you'll notice one thing that's interesting is that all children will develop a customized writing style around grade 4 or 5. And there is research that shows that those who learned cursive first have a more legible personal writing style. And one thing to think about with cursive is, what do you have to have in cursive in your learning environment? And the truth is, you need your sandpaper letters in cursive, and you need your foundational movable alphabet, your pink and blue and green, that's an extra one, thanks to Ms Dwyer, alphabets in cursive, okay? The sandpaper letters and movable alphabets for the pink, blue, and green alphabet should match the same font. Once the child starts reading, they can switch to print. And this is miraculous. When you're handwriting, you always handwrite everything is in cursive. But when you give them any prepared labels, prepared materials, they can be in print. And when they start working on spelling with the spelling alphabets, the solid color red, black, or blue alphabets, they can use print. It's magical. And, you know, we could talk more about this. Send me an email if you want to talk about it. But it just happens and it works. A lot has to do with the fact that we are immersed in a print-based society. So the children are absorbing print everywhere in our culture. So basically, we're making them bilingual with graphics, right? With cursive and with print. They're becoming bilingual when we teach them cursive. Okay, so what happens next? Once children are at the second period of knowledge for all letters and sounds, you've been teaching them the sandpaper letters, okay? And they can do them all at the second period. So you say, show me the Z, show me the L, show me the P. They can find it, okay? Second period for all the sandpaper letters. They can also do the fourth level, all levels of the sound game. And when you get there, then you can introduce the movable alphabet. This is an important point. There's a lot of foundational work before the alphabet comes in, and many of us introduce the alphabet too soon, and then it becomes a chore. The children don't want to do it. You're like giving them assignments. Do these words, and they kind of like it. They're being polite, but no, it's not really from the heart. We want this explosion into writing where they're just writing letters and writing stories, and we want that, and it'll happen if we follow this. It can happen if we follow this procedure. So here are the steps for using the movable alphabet. We're going to begin with the card alphabet, like this one pictured here. Why? Why? Because it's easier. The child does not have to orient them upside down, and they look very much like the sandpaper letters, okay? They're bringing over that same idea. It's easier. So we start with the card alphabet. We start with writing their own ideas with the card alphabet. So your first lesson, always with any alphabet, is how to take letters out and put them back into the box. No matter what alphabet you're doing, that's your first lesson. Carry the box, take letters in, put them back, okay? Put the box away carefully. Otherwise, you're going to spend your whole life picking up alphabet letters off of the floor. Ask me how I know. It's really awful. Okay, so taking them out, putting them back. Then they start writing ideas. So they've taken them out, they can hold the box, they can use the letters, and then you say, let's write about something really wonderful. I remember you told me you were at a birthday party this weekend, weren't you? Yes, and they'll tell you something about the birthday. And maybe they'll tell you, yes, there was cake, there was balloons. Okay, that's what we should write. And you're going to write their words. Which word should we write first? And then they're going to say, oh, cake. Okay, and then you're going to help them sound out cake and write it down using the letters, okay? So that's the first alphabet. From there, they can progress into writing whole stories, but it's always writing what they want. You may be the inspiration to help them realize they want to write something. You may be that guide, that link, but they need to want to write. It has to come from them, okay? Once they're fluid with this, we introduce the cutout alphabet, like you can see here, where Chloe had a good dream. Do you love that? Chloe had a good dream. I love it. Okay, the cutout alphabet is inherently more challenging than the card alphabet, again, because we have to turn it over, and we're not going to give them the phonograms. At this point, they're going to build phonograms. So you can see right here, we're giving them all the pink, blue, and green letters. Easy, right? Everything they're used to with the sandpaper letters, they can choose from. They're not seeking, they don't have to build anything. First step, isolating the stimuli, which is how to build words. Next step, you can add in the complexity of how to turn letters around, how to build phonograms, okay? And again, you're still writing ideas. You're writing lists of your favorite foods, your friends, your dogs, animals you love, whatever, okay? And then you get into aligning letters on the lines. And then if there's a remedial student who's much older, isn't connecting, that's the time when we as an adult would give them dictation, we would give them objects, or we would give them photos. But that's our remedial plan. That's not our go-to, okay? That's not our go-to. And the context and inspiration really matter. You have to really help the children just get so unbelievably excited about it. Here's a quote from Mario Montessori that might help. To make himself heard, humans no longer depended on the volume of their voice. With the alphabet, they could be heard from one continent to another, from yesterday to tomorrow. They could reach people in distant space and time without uttering a sound. In silence, their thoughts could be heard all over the world at the same time. Whoa, right? Like, whoa, that's crazy power. That's what the alphabet does. That's the awe that we have to present the alphabet with. And here's some, I love this. Here's some examples. There's my class, rocket ship, right? Chloe had a good dream, right? And here, I love this one. This tree is celebrating the flower. I mean, I would never have thought of that. Look at that. And she wants to write about it. Okay, right? So here she's using the solid color alphabets. She's a more advanced alphabet writer, and she's starting to write with her hand as well. You can read more about the movable alphabet in my graduate thesis, which I did at Harvard as part of my graduate program. I'm really interested in language. So read more about it there. There's tons of good information. Okay, here's your quiz on the Dwyer system. You should begin movable alphabet work as soon as the child, A, is confident with all 4 stages of the sound game, B, can bring you any pink, green, or blue sandpaper letter, or C, both A and B. What do you think? What do you think? Drum roll, what are you going to choose? C! The answer is C, both A and B. You need the sound game at the 4th level and all the sandpaper letters at the 2nd period. You don't have to be at the 3rd period, 2nd period, okay? All right, another question. Here's a quiz. The first activity with the movable alphabet should be writing phonetic words that you dictate or give as objects to the child. True or false? False! Don't do it! The first movable alphabet activity is taking it into and out of the box. The second is writing words that matter to the child, okay? All right, you get this down, everything's going to change in your classroom. And now we also have a totally distinct aspect of the program where we're teaching the hand how to write, right? Fine motor skills, connecting what we're thinking with what our hand is doing. There's so many activities in the environment that we use to do that. And the first thing we're starting with is all the practical life activities where we're strengthening the muscles of the hand and helping the mind guide the actions of the hand. The next, in sensorial, we have this critical activity is the geometric cabinet. And you can see here that the child is tracing it. This is not a puzzle. It is a tracing activity. The child picks up the shape, traces the shape, puts it down, traces the inset, right? traces the inset, picks up the shape, traces the shape, puts it back. It's all about tracing. It's hard to make this, right? You go like this, and you go like this, and you go like this to try and teach him how to make that little 2-finger. And that's what they use to trace, okay? Then we get a little more advanced with that when we do the botany cabinet, because now we're not just using our fingers, we're using this little cuticle stick. So we can get around the tiny edges and inset parts of those little leaf shapes, right? You can't get your fingers in there. You need something tinier for that cuticle stick. That's the next phase. Then we're doing specifically the metal inset work, and that's the first time we officially introduce the pencil. And they have this controlled environment to learn how to use it, by tracing the inset first, then the shape, right? Because the inset is easier, slowly adding complexity. And then ultimately, we start writing words right on chalkboards, and we use their movable alphabet work. When we think they're ready, we see them, they've written something, right? And then we say, I think I can show you something else. And you get that, you come with me, and you bring the chalkboard and the chalk, and you're like, okay, let's do it. And you show them how, and you copy one word that they wrote, right? Oh my gosh, it's so fun. And then they do it. Oh, it's fantastic. And then the explosion, really, you'll notice this explosion happening because you'll see them writing something, and that's when you want to introduce the chalkboards, when they're already just there, okay? And if all this preparation is done correctly, the child will spontaneously discover they can write with their hand around age 4.5 or 5. Generally, again, there's big ranges on ages. You can't say it always happens at this age or this age. Every child is unique. That's okay. Don't freak out. They'll get there. Just keep doing the foundational work we need to do. And here's an example. My son wrote this for my friend who was coming over. Dear Donna, hope you have a Merry Christmas, Dante. Oh, I love that. Okay, so back to the big picture of the language path. We've gone through spoken language, hearing the sounds of language, writing, and now we're into reading, right? Here's where the big bang for the buck always happens. You'll notice at some point, just like with handwriting, you'll notice that the child starts reading. You'll hear them sound it out. Their parents will come in and tell you, she was trying to sound out a word this weekend, right? And you just like, okay, that's the moment. That's when you introduce the phonetic object box. Just like when a baby takes his first steps, you can't predict when this is going to happen, but it will happen, and we observe to see what happens when. So the first activity we introduce at this stage is the phonetic object box. And we're all focused on one word at a time at this part, okay? It's the word level reading. And here we have this little picture. I love it. It shows you've got a little pumpkin, you've got a little crab, and you've got all these pig, a mop, right? Frog, hat, gift. Okay, and then you are going to have little slips of paper, and you're going to say, I'm going to write down a word, and you have to figure out which one I want. And you write it so they can see you, right? And then you give it to them. And then they have to put it where it goes, and you do that for each one. It's very exciting, very fun. Okay, first time they officially read, they make a little book out of all their little word slips. Oh my gosh, they decorate it. Their parents are pumped at this point, and the child's really excited because they have read. They have officially begun to read, all right? From there, we expand. Once they're confident with, we do this as long as they need to get confident with the phonetic object box, and then we let them work independently. We give them the 3-part cards, okay? And in this 3-part cards, we always start by showing, we lay out the photos first. They read the card, the labels, and they match the labels to the words. And then this control card checks the work. It's just like the phonetic object box, except we add in a control of error, which is this control card. Okay, remember, just like this, but adding in a control of error. This is not a direct matching work because that inherently discourages the young child because they see words that they can't read. No, this is a reading activity. That's how Mario Montessori designed it. That's the perfect use for 3-part cards. Okay. Once they're confident and capable of 3-part card reading and phonetic reading is really strong for them, then we'll add in these phonetic word cards. And these have no pictures and no control of error. So it's just reading for the joy of reading. I can read words. I can read words. Okay? And from there, we can really go to town with phonetic activity cards. These are so fun, where the children get to play charades. Right? They have this stack of cards. They each pick a card. They have to act it out, right? Phonetic activity cards. But they can read each one, and then they act it out. Their friends have to guess what they're doing. It's fantastic. Okay, so you can see there's many different ways, many opportunities for the child to practice their developing phonetic reading skills. And from there, once we're good with the phonetic object box and we're introducing phonetic 3-part cards, we are right away going to the phonogram object box. Same exact thing, but each object in the box isolates one phonogram. Like you can see in this picture, tree, bee, fish, okay, horn, cork. Do you see that? So one of the green sandpaper letter sounds is isolated in each word. Nothing else, nothing more complex for these words. It has to be accurately spelled phonetically. Okay, so toy works, but coil does not work for one of these. Does that make sense? It has to match the green sandpaper letter key sound. Okay, same exact procedures with the phonetic object box. Again, the next step is phonogram 3-part cards. And then we have phonogram lists where we isolate one phonogram. It's isolated in red, the concept, and then without the isolation in red, we have a list of other words for them to read. Now we move into sight words or puzzle words, okay? And these are words that they don't follow any rules at all, so we just have to memorize them. We use the 3-period lesson, 3 or 4 at a time. You only need about 40 of these. Once the child gets the hang of this, you don't need to teach them 100. I mean, how many sight words are there in English? Oh my gosh, a ton. You're not going to teach them all of them. You're going to teach them some, maybe about 40 of the really high frequency ones, so that they can get confident when they start to read books. They're not going to stumble on these words they're seeing all the time. All right. And again, 3-period lesson, a few at a time at the child's pace. Then we introduce little books. This is when they have the possibility of reading. There are many different little books. There's a bazillion different programs out there. I'm not going to recommend one or the other right now, but you want something that is interesting to the child, meets them where they are, and has a subject matter that matters to them. If the subject matter matters to them, they'll get there, but not too many words on the page. Okay. Now they're starting to read regular books, right? And they're starting to notice that things aren't spelled the way we expect them to be spelled. They're going to keep coming across all of these crazy things. It's like they're going to start asking you about spelling. And in their movable alphabet work, they're going to say, did I spell that right? They're not just going to, they're going to start to care if it's an accurate spelling. That's when we introduce the phonogram spelling folders. This is designed specifically by Ms Dwyer, and the designs are written out clearly in her little booklet, A Path Through the Exploration of Any Language, leading to Reading and Writing, which she developed based on her work in English and Swahili. And I'm going to show you a little quick video showing you how to use these phonogram spelling folders. You remember the sound that these letters make? A, that's right. Did you know that there's more than one way to spell the A sound? It's true. These cards will show us some of the ways. Can you take the cards out so carefully? This spells A. This spells A. This spells A. This spells A. I'll show you about this special one. If I put a letter right there, and we covered that, you know what that spells? At. At. If I let us see this letter, it changes this. This is called silent E. It makes this letter say its name instead of its sound. So now this says 8. 8. If we add a letter there, that says mat, but that says mate. This is called silent E. It doesn't make any sound at all. If you ever forget what these say, don't worry. There's a clue on the back that will remind you. There are many other things inside our pouch. Look at this. What do we have? A book. Look, this matches this. We'll put it right here. Can you take out the rest? I love these little books. They're so darling. Each one of these little books has many words that spell the A sound in these different ways. I'll show you. And if you ever forget, there's a clue on the back. Let's see what's in here. B-A, bay. D-A, day, day. You can keep going and read every word in this book. You can read every word in all of these books. Come and see me when you're done. Did you love reading those words? Let's clean it up so carefully, and next time you could do the same folder or a different one. There are so many. So you can find that video on our YouTube channel, and you can see more. On the YouTube channel, you'll see that there's an introduction about how to invite the child to do the work with you, and also how to put the work away. It's really important that you follow consistent steps for both of those whenever you give a lesson. The first thing is always inviting them, showing them how to carry it, and then the last is always how to put it away, letting them put it away, letting them return it to its spot on the shelves. Okay, so the Phonogram spelling folders are isolating the concept of spelling, and the kids, oh my gosh, they love these. They're taking them out every day. They just want to read. It's really amazing how excited they get about these folders. So if you don't have them, make them or buy them, get them in your classroom. Another aspect that Ms Dwyer introduced was the Phonogram dictionary. And when they're reading, we use this. Again, everything's based on those phonograms from the green sandpaper letters. And we use this to help them find the sounds that they're stumbling on when they're reading. So if they're reading, there's also a video on this on our YouTube channel, but if they're reading a word and they can't read the word high, they come across H-I-G-H. They bring it to you, they're always coming to you. What does this word say? We want to help them be independent in figuring out what the words say. So this dictionary helps them do that. You'd say, oh, that word doesn't make sense. It doesn't say higa, which is what, of course, H-I-G-H would spell if we were a phonetic language. No, it doesn't. Let's see if we can find that sound in the dictionary. And you come over to the dictionary and you scroll through the tabs until you find the IGH sound. You open it up and you see that there's an IE sandpaper letter there, right? So it tells you, oh, it makes the I sound. See if it makes sense if you read it that way, okay? So this is a tool to help them not come to you and help figuring out reading on their own, to give them some independence in that. It won't work for everything, but it works a lot. Enough to give them that courage they need to overcome all the tricky words that we have in English. Once they're going from there, we go into the spelling alphabets. And this is where we're using print. We don't need to use cursive anymore. We can use print. And we're using 2 solid color alphabets, right? Blue, black, red. You can find the alphabet colors that you like. They're smaller alphabets, which makes it easier to write lots and lots of words with them. And we're going to start by making some words from the phonetic object box, where we're going to isolate that phonogram in red or in blue, whichever your secondary color is, okay? Then you can do vowel-based explorations of phonograms. You can do consonant-based explorations. So here you can see the fork, storm, snort. Those are actually from one of those phonogram books, right? Where we're going, oh, I love this. I'm going to see if I can write all of these words from the phonogram booklet. And your friend could give you dictation, or you could, read it and then close the book and try to remember how to spell all the words you can from the booklet. There's lots of different things. Do the same thing with the phonogram lists. You could try to find all the phonograms in a book. You could use word study games with these solid spelling alphabets. Again, this is at a point where the child is interested in spelling. We don't really care about the spelling that they're giving us with their written or with their movable alphabet work until they start to become interested in spelling. Before age 6, spelling doesn't really count. And it's when they get into elementary that we can help them focus on spelling. But at this age, it's only as their interest draws them to spelling. Don't worry about it other than that. And here's another example from the spelling alphabets of doing 2 different phonograms spelled 2 different ways from the phonogram folders side by side. That's tricky. Figure out which one's spelled which way. In this process, they're going to start to find words that they're new to them. They may want to have their own personal lexicon, a little notebook where they write down words they haven't spelled accurately before. And this little guy is writing down the word socks because it's not the way he thought it would be spelled. So he's writing it down in his little lexicon, his notebook, so he can have that as a reference and a record of the new words he's learning. He spontaneously decided to do this, and it's Ms Dwyer recommends it. I was like, woo, boy, did she know what she was doing. Okay, so to revisit, we've gone through spoken language, foundation for everything, hearing the sounds in language, right? Language games, sound games, writing language, movable sandpaper letters, movable alphabet, and then handwritten exercises, and then reading activities. There are many reading activities. We just touched on a few of them, and it extends, of course, beyond this into reading classification with definitions and stages, functions of words, word study, and sentence analysis, reading analysis work. There's so much in it. And these steps, they're not all happening in order, okay? It's not like, okay, we do this, then we do this, then we do this. No, the child just doesn't comply with that. Spoken language is happening throughout everything. Sometimes they're jumping a little bit around. The order is really important to make sure they're capable of success. So you're not going to introduce that movable alphabet until they know those sandpaper letters at period 2, and they can do the sound game, all 4 levels of the sound game. Okay, so that's kind of a really hard and fast rule. And other things tend to be a little bit flexible. Once they start reading, they're happening overlapping, okay? And follow their interest a bit more and follow their abilities. Some abilities develop so rapidly, there's barely a chance to get through all the stages, but they still like to, right? But some children, it's so slowly, you're like, oh my gosh, is he ever going to get there? And they do. They get there. So be patient. Here's a lovely little graphic. If you get the original version of Ms Dwyer's booklet, it has this explanatory graph in there that kind of shows you the different activities that we just walked through and some extensions as well. And I'll leave you with this quote, this great quote from Dr. Montessori. The adult is a guide, not a teacher. Remember this. We must give the child the means of self-creation and encourage him. Courage, my dear, courage. You are a new man that must adapt to this new world. Go on triumphantly. I am here to help you. I love that. It's my favorite quote. Definitely. And remember the miraculous potential of each child. We just don't know who they're going to become. Okay, now to help you consolidate your memory and the learning that you've just gone through and things that matter to you, take a minute now to revisit your list and update it. Right? Is there anything that changed about your understanding of the program that you want to update? The other key activity I can ask you to do is a 3-2-1 reflection. We do this in the Harvard course every week. After class, take a minute to write down, before you do anything else, 3 things you didn't know before you watched this video, 2 things you'd like to continue to research as your curiosity has been piqued, and 1 thing you're going to change in your personal and professional life based on what you just learned. Okay, so take time to do each of those things, and I will leave you with these references, so if you're interested in going deeper in any of the information that's been presented, you can find them. Just go to scholar.google.com and search for the title. Okay, thank you so much for listening. It's been wonderful to have this time with you. I hope you found it beneficial. Take care and good luck.